again to Profiles on Nantucket Community Television, Channel 8. I'm Charley Walters. My guest today is Rob Benchley, who is a man of varied talents, mainly involving photography, but not simply photography. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be quite an experience.
I hope so. Let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up? Where were you born, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I was born in New York City, which always surprised me when I realized it, because I didn't really like New York City very much. But
I didn't know it till just now.
And and my parents and my sister and I lived in New Canaan, Connecticut for many years. And my parents had always come to Nantucket with their own families back in the 30s. And actually, my parents met in Sconset at the Sconset Casino when they were in their early teens. My mother always tells a story that they met at a movie at the casino, and my father was sitting behind her, and he put gum in her hair. and that should have been a signal to the rest of their relationship. But anyway, yes. So I started coming here with my sister at an early age. You know, I didn't even know it at the time. So.
And did you live in New Canaan until you moved here?
I moved around. My mother passed away in 1976, and my sister and I sold the house, and we were both living in the Midwest in different parts. And I had moved back to the East, working in Boston at the Boston University Theater School of Arts. I was an instructor there, and so I was much closer to Nantucket, and I came down here as much as I could to revisit the old stomping grounds and sort of live a vicarious life of being on Nantucket while I lived in Boston. And then I found myself without a job in Boston. And I applied for a job at the Enquirer Mirror because I was trying to do some more writing and a lot more photography. And I thought that would be a great place to learn some more and maybe get paid doing it. That was 1983.
So you moved here and started a job there in 83.
In 83, yeah.
And were you doing writing and photography?
I was there, yeah. When you take one of those sort of entry-level jobs there, you kind of do it all. And it was still very much a family run. Tom and Marie Giffen were running it then. And, you did court report, and you did the Board of Selectmen, and you did all those things. Board of Appeals, those are fun. And you always carried a camera. So the reporters did it all. And it was a terrific place to cut your teeth.
Now, you had done photography prior to that, I assume.
I had, yes. I worked in southern Indiana in a town named New Harmony, and it was much like Nantucket. It had a very well-established history to it, sort of a pioneer history, actually. And the town itself was going under a restoration. They were trying to sort of reclaim some of the old history. And I was a photographer for that project and ended up working for the local weekly newspaper there as well, because my job at the historic company dried up as well. So I seem to be pretty good at lost causes.
Well, now, the name of the town was?
New Harmony.
Which I looked up on the map. I wasn't familiar with it, but I believe it's on the Ohio River?
It's actually on the Wabash River. It's pretty close to the Ohio River. It's upstream from the Ohio River. Evansville, Indiana is on the Ohio River. Wabash is a tributary. And it was big, wide, muddy, scary, deep-running river full of giant catfish.
Huh. Well, you told me a few years ago that you had lived there. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know until about a month ago that you met someone else there who also lives more or less on Nantucket at this point, and that is Joe Hale.
Oh, Joe Hale, right, yes.
Who is an Indianan, not from New Harmony, but he grew up in Indiana.
He did indeed, yeah. Yeah, he was working there at the same time I was, and he was the kind of director of the arts program there. Historic New Harmony had an amazing theater and arts, visual arts presence in the town. And we did a lot of theater there and a lot of, we had a jazz festival, we had a country music festival, we had a folk festival. Not very well attended because it's a little town of 120 people.
120
120,
people,
yeah.
really? What's amazing, they have
Or
so
maybe
many
it was
things.
1,020. It wasn't much.
Not very many people in,
No,
in
right.
either case. Well, it's remarkable they did so much in a town that small.
Yes, and it was actually it was run by a guy named Ralph Schwarz, who had an endowment from had funding from the Lilly Endowment in Indianapolis, and he was a visionary and did some amazing things in his lifetime to further sort of the thinking about how we treat our historic places and how we keep them running and how we value them. It was a great experience.
Let's pick up in the 80s again. Why? I think of you as a photographer more than anything else, which may be wrong, so please correct me if it is, but why photography as opposed to writing or teaching in your case? What draws you to that more than anything else?
Well, I started with photography because, people like to express themselves, and I didn't know how to express myself, but those things are inside of you and they have to come out somehow. And it took me a long time to realize that the photography was a way I could safely express myself without having to make a commitment or ruffle anybody's feathers or anything that might lead to discourse of any kind. Apparently, I was terrified of all those things. And I was kind of scared of people, too. So photography was a way I could at least talk to myself. And then it became evident that there was a way to have other people look at it, and I could interact with them that way, through them looking at my pictures. And that also sort of fit in with the newspaper work. And then somebody said, well, why don't you write about this and cover this and that? And I could still, that was pretty safe. And I survived on that for a long time. And it kind of led to, by the sharing part of it and also working backstage at the theater, that kind of led it into an educational type thing. I was a very visual thinker. And so communicating those ideas, and before I knew it, I was having to talk to real life people and figured out that that wasn't so bad. So the photography helped me through all that, but it also was terribly instructive. And so knowing that, it's very freeing feeling and very valuable.
Based on what you're saying, it seems to me that maybe there wasn't a particular photographer that inspired you to go more deeply into photography. It was photography itself rather than, pick a name, Ansel Adams, whoever.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
I think that's true. It was a very personal sort of a soul, S-O-L-E, kind of a thing for me. And then, as I matured somewhat and looked outwards, there were a lot of people that inspired me. And actually I have a memorable photograph in my head that was taken right here in Nantucket, and it appeared in the National Geographic magazine in 1976, I think. And Stanifeld was the photographer with a story about Nantucket, and it was a beautiful full-page photo of some kids playing in a field behind the old mill. And the story was it was called Life's Tempo on Nantucket. And I remember reading that, looking at it, and I was so impressed by his photography that really opened a lot of doors for me.
And the writer of the article was?
The writer of the article was my first cousin, Peter Benchley.
People would have recognized that surname from the beginning of this show, obviously.
Right.
There was Peter, Nathaniel,
Yep.
Robert Benchley back in the 20s and
Yep.
30s. There's another Nat Benchley who was an actor. I used to watch him on The Wire. There would seem to be a creativity gene throughout your family over the generations, and it's manifested itself in different ways.
Well, as my father, one of the three Roberts would say, the woods are full of us. And And it didn't just touch the men either. My sister is incredibly articulate academic archaeologist, and she's done all kinds of terrific things for the field of archaeology. But yeah, and it seems like nobody set out to do that. I mean, it wasn't an intentional thing. I think we just, well, for my case, I kind of just fell into it because it was helpful and comfortable. My cousin Nathaniel, who actually did a one-man show, and he actually did it here on Nantucket as well, called Benchley Despite Himself, which were some of the wonderful anecdotes from our grandfather, Robert Sr. And that was a terrific hit. And he also had a starring role in The Wire. And Peter, of course, did Jaws and many other things. One of my favorite books he did was called The Girl from the Sea of Cortez, which is a lovely story. And I think that was one of his favorites as well. They didn't make a movie out of it, but I think Jaws sort of taught him a lesson.
Never too late.
And it's never too late, right?
Well, when I'm thinking about it, I can't think of any Benchleys that I've met or whom I know of who weren't creative one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And to take it a step further, I don't recall hearing that name Benchley outside of your family. Is this an unusual surname?
There are a few other Benchley families out across the country. We're always in search of them to make sure they're not imposters.
Are they distant relations, or you never got that far?
I think they are. Yes. Yep. Yes. There's actually Robert Benchley in the Worcester area, who's a distant relative, and there's some in the Midwest, and there's actually a town in Texas called Benchley, Texas.
Really?
Which was actually named after my great-great-grandfather.
Really?
Who settled out there. He was the lieutenant governor of Massachusetts for some time, and I think he kind of went a little cuckoo and decided to leave the Commonwealth and ended up in Texas.
Well, politics will do that to you.
Politics will do it, right.
Where is Benchley, Texas?
It's north of College Station, Bryan, and in East Texas, eastern Texas. And I went there once on a fishing trip, and I had a photograph that had been taken as a PR stunt, a Hollywood PR stunt, when my grandfather was still working in Hollywood. And in it was the railroad station at Benchley, Texas. And the photograph depicted all these Hollywood people lined up with the Hollywood people and the people of the town, the townspeople. It was a PR shot, and nothing ever came of it, but the photograph survived. So on a whim, I made a copy of the photograph and took it with me on this fishing trip. Stopped by Benchley, it's a whistle stop, and there was a saddle shop and a bakery and a newspaper, an old newspaper actually, and a broken down gas station. And I found 4 or 5 of the people in the photograph that was taken in the 40s. And this was back in the 80s. So that was a lot of fun.
I'll bet it was.
And one of the guys said to me, "What are you really doing here, boy?"
Now, did you convince him you were legit?
Yes, I did. So.
Let's go back to the 1980s on Nantucket. How long were you with the Enquirer and Mirror?
I was there from 1983 through 1986, I'm pretty sure. And I was getting this signals from my own brain that I was going to be staying on Nantucket. And I fortunately had a piece of property. My sister and I have a piece of property in Sconset. And friends of mine said, "So you know how to build stuff? You worked in the theater all those years. You can build your own house." And I thought, "Oh, okay, fine." So I designed a house with help from a lot of people. Fine Woodworking magazine helped me build the house. Back issues, of course. And some friends helped, and so I started building this house, and then it took me 4 years to finally move in. I think I got the building permit in 84 or 85, and I moved in 88. It was not finished. Still haven't got paint or baseboards in the closets. That was a while ago.
But you have your own house on Nantucket in
My own house in
Sconset,
Nantucket.
which you built yourself.
Yes.
I mean, not single-handed, but mostly single-handed.
Mostly single-handedly. I hired a good friend of mine, Andy Kostakis, to build the foundation. And he hired me to be his mason's tender. So
You were working for yourself.
I was working for myself, and I was in very good shape carrying those cinder blocks. Wow.
So post-I&M, what else have you done over the last, 35 years?
God, it's been quite a while, hasn't it? Well, once I didn't finish my house and still moved in, there was another startup newspaper, the Nantucket Beacon, which people might remember. That was in 1989. And I worked there as a photographer and a writer for the 9 years it was in publication. It finally went out of business. And then after that, a few years after that, there was another startup publication, the Nantucket Independent. And I did the same thing for them. And it was so much fun doing those, sort of being in competition with the Enquirer Mirror. But that kind of competition keeps you sharp. And it also gives you a sense of when to speak or not when to speak. And, but mostly just keeping an edge. And that was really, really good for me. The problem was they had lousy business plans and the economy couldn't support 2 newspapers. And the Enquirer Mirror just outlasted them, which, good for them. But it was a terrific run. And I also did work for the original Nantucket magazine. Mm-hmm. I think Butsy Lovelace started that.
Yes, he was involved there. Yeah.
So that was throughout, and those are some good productive years.
Now, were you doing freelance work at the same time?
Yes, quite a bit actually. This was before there was digital photography, and a lot of the real estate offices needed photographs of their properties. And it was a hot market, and that dried up pretty quickly when 1-hour photo places started coming in, because the real estate places would take their own pictures. Huh. That was fine. And then digital happened, and then that changed everything. I also did a fair amount of weddings. I advertised as a portrait photographer, but I got a lot of weddings. And those were very stressful. And I stopped doing them because I kept having bad luck. And one of the times, actually, that was the second wedding I shot for some very influential, very nice, well-known family up on the cliff. And I took my 8 rolls of film to the camera shop, and those 8 rolls of film disappeared. Never saw them again. God. So
how many pictures on a roll?
36.
Oh boy! So you're talking about 300
easily, yeah.
So someone's whole wedding
gone.
Went up in smoke.
Yes, yeah. And I apologize to those people till the day they died. They're both gone. But I should have stopped there.
That is a nightmare.
That was a nightmare. But so things like that happen all the time. But wedding photographers, man, they work really hard, and I so appreciate all the effort they put in, and I can see why they get the price they do, because it is big time work, and it's the whole thing. It's the album, it's the rehearsal dinner, it's the whole thing, not to mention the stressed families. Mm-hmm. And I think the stressed families is what really shied me away. Because I said earlier, I kind of try to stay away from contention. And if you,
I don't blame you a bit. Well, now what about videography? Have you gotten into that at any point?
I did a little bit of videography when I worked at the Beacon. I don't know if you remember this, and it was pretty B quality production, but the Beacon had a television news program, and it was all pre-recorded. And I happened to be in Codfish Park during the storm of 1992.
I do remember this.
And
Yeah.
so I got the video of Betsy Smith's house floating away.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch the video, I mean, I remembered this in my head. I didn't say it on the video, but that's the house where my wife and I met.
Really?
And I happen to be the one
No kidding.
videotaping it floating away.
And that's really what happened. It didn't fall apart or get bashed. It was suddenly, instead of resting on sand, it was floating in the water.
It was floating in the
one
water.
piece.
And a bunch of us were standing right there, and a couple of waves came up, and it was tipping. And then this one giant wave came in with the surge, and it was like the Wizard of Oz. It just lifted up on the back of this backwash, and out it went, and then down and tumbled over, and mesmerizing.
Yeah, well, as you say, it was in one piece when it first hit the water.
Yeah.
But it didn't last very long.
No, it didn't. It didn't last but 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's about how long that clip is.
Is that on YouTube by any chance?
It was on YouTube for a short time, and one of our producers at the newspaper there spotted it a few years ago and asked them to take it down because it was copyrighted material, and they agreed to do that. But
so you hadn't put it on; somebody else.
no,
had.
somebody else would put it on. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's available on the historic. Nantucket Historic Association website. We just did a history thing on Codfish Park a couple of years ago. So it's on one of those Scots at History Night tapes.
Now, in a case like this, where you were working when you took that video, does that belong to your former employers or does it belong to you?
It's a terrific question, and the organization that created that is no longer. I think it's a great question. Like the photographs I took for the Enquirer Mirror or any of those publications, are they mine or are they theirs? And has never been anything signed, but the understanding is that they're mine. And if there's a place where it's appropriate to mention those publications, by all means, I certainly do it, because that's important anyway, to put it in a historical section.
And for you to get credit, it's important too.
Right. Oh, yes. Yeah.
What about books?
Yeah. What about books? That's been another aspect that caught me by surprise. But always when you would love to have some of your photographs in a book, and it started with Peter Brace's Walking Nantucket, which is that's been out for more than almost 30 years now.
Is it that old, really?
Yeah, I think so. And first published here on the island, and it's still in print, and there pictures of trails and things, and so the production aspect, again, it's like working a weekly newspaper, kind of all used to that. And then a couple of other things came up. The Sconset Trust did a thing called Voices of the Village, and I submitted many, many portraits of the people who were being interviewed by Nancy Newhouse. And then, God, this is more than 20 years ago, I got a call from Jim Patrick, who you may remember was a tennis pro here and also started the Short Play Festival.
Yes, a playwright himself.
And a playwright himself, yes, of course. And he was thinking about looking into doing an article about the commercial scallop industry here. And as he tells it, he went through the back issues of the Enquirer Mirror, and he kept seeing my name under photographs of people scalloping. And so he gave me a call, and we talked about it over a cheeseburger and a beer, and we went to work the very next day, and that was in 1998, I think, 99. And that came out of that was scallop season, which is 21 or 22 years old now. I'm terrible in math, but and it's still on the bookshelves, and we self-published it, and that was a very exciting thing. We both learned a great deal, especially the business about what computer platform you make. We wrote the whole thing on a PC, and we took it to the printer, and the printer said, you've got to put it on a Mac. So we had to physically retype everything on a Mac. Today, you'd push a button and it would switch it. But anyway, that was a great success. The book paid for itself in about a year and a half. We paid our investors back.
Oh.
Our investors being my wife. And and it's still on the shelves, and we're hoping we still have a lot of copies left, and it's still very topical. And an awful lot of what was written then is either coming true or is still demonstrated every season, about the setbacks to the industry and the weather and the state of the harbor and the markets and everything. It was a wonderful project to work on. And actually, we were going to spend 1 year doing the research and the photography, and we discovered that the fingers of effects of the commercial scallop thing goes farther and farther back into history, but also into all the networking and social networking on Nantucket of the real kind, not the digital kind. So it took us 2 years. We did a second season just to try to get it right.
In the same book? Or
In
is
the
it
same book,
in
yeah.
the same book.
So it says a pivotal year on the introduction in Nantucket's scallop fleet, but it was actually over 2 years.
Any other books?
Yeah, well, I had been a sort of a contributor photographically to the Sconset Trust. And back in 2007, this little project called Moving Sankaty Head Lighthouse came up, and they asked me to take some photographs while they were doing it, and that in itself turned into its own project. One of the best assignments I ever had, because the company that was moving the lighthouse, it was a combination of International Chimney Corporation and expert house movers. And they said to me, you can take all the photographs you want, and you can go anywhere you want, but you just 2 rules: stay out of our way and wear your hard hat. And as a newspaper journalist, getting that kind of a free license is heaven. So that was another natural for a publication. So the Sconset Trust, myself and Bob Felch, we put together a book for the move of Sankaty Lighthouse. And that was quite a community turnout, that whole project. It was, unforgettable. And if you forget about it, you could always go look at the book, because everything's there. Every inch of that thing moving.
Well, this is a perfect lead-in to the rest of the show. You are the unofficial, the informal lighthouse keeper of the Sankaty Head Lighthouse.
I am indeed. Back in 2007, when the move was happening, the Coast Guard donated the lighthouse and the land to the Sconset Trust. They were clearly the most obvious receivers in line for that, and the Coast Guard still maintains the light itself because it's still an aid to navigation.
Even though they don't own it, they still maintain it.
They still maintain it. It's still on the charts. It still flashes every 7.5 seconds, day in and day out. And so the trust needed a custodian, let's put it that way. And since I lived here, and I live right down the street, and I'm here year-round, I got the keys, and as the 10-year-old in me resurfaced, and now I have these wonderful keys to a wonderful lighthouse.
I'm assuming you're the only one with keys, or maybe not.
There's a couple more keys, but I'm not telling you where they are.
Okay, I wasn't going to ask anyway.
Okay, well, the Coast Guard has them.
Well, as they should.
As they should, yeah.
Now, you were talking about it being moved back for obvious reasons. The coastline is eroding, as it has for thousands of years.
Right.
How much erosion has there been since it was moved?
It's eroded some since it's been moved. Mother Nature has been kind to Sankaty Head in the last 15 or so years. The angle of the wave has been kind, the wind direction, the length of the storms, maybe 5 feet.
Oh, that's not bad.
Which isn't bad, but further north, 10 or 15 feet further south of the geotube installation, that's pretty stable there. But further south, there's been a lot of erosion. So right at Sankaty, it's been pretty good.
Not many people know this, in spite of the fact that it was written about in the paper this summer. And some people don't agree with this, but just a few feet away from the lighthouse is the highest point on Nantucket.
Yes, I would quite agree. It is the highest place on Nantucket.
Which is one reason why it is where it is.
Exactly.
But it's subject, as we were saying, it's subject to some erosion, but it could be a lot worse.
It could be so much worse right now. And of course, the highest spot actually that you were just mentioning is actually right on the edge.
Yep.
And so whatever storm, whenever it comes, it'll be lower because that part that's 103 or however, whatever the number is, 105 feet above sea level.
It was 111, but that was 40 or 50 years ago.
Yes,
and there has been erosion.
And that has been eroded.
And it's easy to spot. If you're on the Sankaty Trust's land around the lighthouse, it's very easy to see what the highest point is in that immediate area.
Yeah, right along that fence line.
But now, on the other side of the lighthouse from the beach, the land falls away pretty abruptly to Sankaty Head Golf Course.
Yes.
So the next time it gets moved, which hopefully won't be for a long time, there's not a whole lot of room there.
There isn't. And actually, when the lighthouse was moved, it was moved to a section of land that's owned by Sankaty Golf. They got an easement for that little section right along the fifth fairway at Sankaty Golf. And so there's a good 200 feet or more from the edge of the cliff now to the lighthouse.
Oh, it's that much. Okay.
There's quite a bit.
More than
and
I
actually,
thought.
we're going to have it surveyed again next week. And so we've got some time, but we are talking, the Lighthouse Committee and the Sankaty Trust, we're looking ahead as much as we can, but we are good for a few decades anyway.
Oh, good, good. Well, that area on the outside is open to the public all the time,
Yes.
or maybe not at night. But how often do people get to go into the lighthouse?
As far as visitors there, getting up into the lighthouse, the Sankaty Trust, we open it twice a year, which doesn't seem like very much, and it's not really, but we're working on that. There are other times, in the summertime, they'll have a pop-up opening. We did that twice this past summer, and we open it to special groups like the schools and the caddies at the caddy camp. They get a tour at the end of the summer, and during COVID, we didn't do very much of that at all. But I think we're looking forward to making it more accessible. And one of the setbacks on that is staffing, because you really need a number of people. It's a safety issue and liability. The insurance company hates it when that door opens. It's hard to insure a lighthouse.
I'll bet it is.
You know, you can, and there are all kinds of tripping hazards in there and everything. So at this point, we're just very cautious about opening it a lot. But that doesn't stop people from coming up, and nor should it. Hundreds and hundreds of people every day. It's really quite amazing.
What are your day-to-day responsibilities as the keeper?
My day-to-day is to make sure that it's on, and I can do that from my kitchen window. It's on 24 hours. I just check the grounds. I check for breaks in the fence and things with the property itself. And we have people who will take care of things like that or if I can't fix it, we can find somebody. But also we maintain some exhibits in there. I'm always working on some kind of a project to make the visitors' experience more interesting. 2 years ago, the Coast Guard removed the old 1,000-watt. It was an aerial beacon that it or something like it had been up there for 75 years, and the motor burned out. And so for about a week there, Sankaty was on, but it wasn't spinning. And the Coast Guard really got tired of coming over to fix that old thing, and so they replaced it with a rotating 100-watt incandescent bulb thing.
100 watt?
100 watt. And what's amazing is it still functions as a lighthouse, even with a 100-watt lamp in it. It looks like a car headlight that rotates, and it's the same one that's at Great Point. And it's a standard for the Coast Guard, that particular beacon. But they're about to install a new one, a new improved beacon there to help to replicate the earlier beacon, which was, as I said, 1,000 watts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's supposed to happen sometime soon.
When I first came here, and that was over 60 years ago, I was told that if you were approaching North America from, or on the same latitude as, say, England or France,
Mm-hmm.
the first light you would see in the United States was Sankaty Head. Was that true? Is it still true?
Well,
Will it be true again when they do the work next year?
I think that was true. It really, there's some lore out there. You've seen it written, who knows, in the retelling, how many more miles they add to it, but as many as 26 or 28 miles off. And probably not the first beacon. There are lots of them in Maine. But because
Provincetown or
Chatham.
Nova Scotia, maybe?
Yeah, and Chatham's
Chatham.
really.
Yeah.
And actually, you can see Chatham Light from the top of Sankaty Light. It's nice.
Really?
Yeah. But in the coming years, no, because when they moved the lighthouse, we lost about 12, 16 feet of elevation because the location they put it at was that much lower than where it had been. But the reason they're putting a new beacon is because from a historical standpoint, and also the Coast Guard's getting the message that people are passionate about lighthouses, and there's an industry that does nothing but beacons for lighthouses, and lighted buoys and everything. And this light is specifically made to be a retrofit in historic lighthouses. And it's an LED lamp. It's actually, in some configurations, it's as many as 4 LED rotating, and it uses less power. It has the ability to be hooked up to solar if needed. It's programmable. It's all high tech. It's got I think it's got kind of that harsh LED light to it, but you can actually change the color temperature if you have the app on your phone. It's right there in the
Whip
booklet.
out your iPhone and change the lighthouse.
Change the lighthouse. So at Christmas we can do green and red. No, but and that's been a long time coming. We've talked with the Coast Guard about how disappointed we were in that one they installed 3 years ago now. But still, if you're in Tom Nevers and you're at the where the focal point is of that light, it's good and bright, just the way it is.
Now, if people want to get more information about that lighthouse, or if they want access, don't give out your home phone, but do they go to the Sconset Trust website, or what would they do? Yeah,
the Sconset Trust website has a lot of information about the lighthouse, and there's actually, and of course there's the book I mentioned that's out there about moving the lighthouse, and I think there might be a gallery there that's still up. We did a day-by-day web log when we moved the lighthouse. So I don't know if that's still there or not.
Mhm. And before we go, you said at least one of your books is in the local bookstores. Are they all in there? How do people go about seeing your work?
Well, you can see my book works at Mitchell's Book Corner and also Bookworks. And I don't have a web page or anything, but I am working on going through some of my old work from the last 35 years, and I'm trying to, I don't want to jinx this by announcing it, so I'm not announcing the fact that I'm working on a retrospective from a historical aspect, and some of my father's photographs that I just found. They're 90 years old, and they're fascinating.
Photographs he made.
Photographs that he took here on Nantucket when he was in his teens.
Wow.
Just found them.
My God, that's fabulous.
Yeah. He was good.
Well, we can all look forward to seeing those. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
All these years later.
I know. Amazing the film has lasted that long.
Yeah.
He never printed them. He never had them printed, but
really?
I found the negatives all rolled up.
My
so
God.
I've been rewashing them and trying to get them flat to fit in the scanner, and some technical hurdles to get over first. But
well, I'm delighted.
So
you
that'll take me another 10 years. So
hopefully less than that.
Hopefully less than that. Yes. Great.
Rob Benchley, thank you for coming on the show. This has been fascinating. We could have talked for hours.
I know.
I wanted to ask you about how Sconset has changed, but maybe another time.
Okay. Yes, we'll try that. And one of the things you mentioned earlier about where do we move the lighthouse to next, I've been proposing the parking lot at Sankaty Head Golf Club, and that's.
But that's gone over really well.
Yeah, that's it's the next highest hill to the west.
Mayflower Hill.
And that's right, Mayflower Hill, and it's got Sankaty's on their menus. It's on all their golf shirts. It's on all their cups and their trophies. Let's put it in the parking lot. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Okay. All right. Making no promises.
Rob, thanks again. This has been fun.
Thank you, Charlie. A lot of fun. Thanks a lot.
For Profiles on Nantucket Community Television, I'm Charley Walters. Thank you for tuning in. Please tune in again.